The message arrived on a Tuesday, a series of strange signals that the radio astronomers at Arecibo couldn't explain. By Wednesday, every major observatory on Earth was pointed at the same coordinates. By Friday, the strange ships appeared in orbit. Commander Sam Fletcher stood at the window of the United Earth Defense Force headquarters, watching the live feed from the orbital cameras. The alien vessels hung in space like massive metal islands, their surfaces covered in what looked like scales or plates. Nothing in human history had prepared them for this moment. "Sir, the alien representatives are requesting a meeting," said Lieutenant Kelly Grant, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. Sam nodded. "Tell them we'll meet aboard the UES Defiant. Neutral ground, or as close as we can get to it." 6 hours later, Sam led a small team through the airlock of the Defiant. Lieutenant Grant walked beside him, along with Olivia Thompson from Communications and 3 armed security officers. They waited in the ship's conference room, the largest space available. The aliens arrived with a hiss of the airlock. The first creatures to step through towered over the humans. Covered in thick, brown fur with massive shoulders and claws like curved daggers, they reminded Sam of bears walking on 2 legs. Behind them came beings with green-gray scales and yellow eyes that narrowed to slits in the ship's lighting. "I am War General Krazek of the Draconis," said the largest of the reptilian aliens. Its voice came through the translator with a metallic ring. "This is Admiral Vorg of the Ursari." He gestured to the bear-like creature beside him. Sam stepped forward. "Commander Sam Fletcher of the United Earth Defense Force. We welcome you to our system." Admiral Vorg made a sound that the translator didn't catch, something between a snort and a growl. "We expected your leaders to meet us, not military underlings." "I speak with the full authority of Earth's United Council," Sam replied, keeping his voice calm. War General Krazek circled the room, his tail dragging behind him. "Your species is smaller than we anticipated. How do you survive with such weak bodies?" Lieutenant Grant stepped forward. "We compensate in other ways." The aliens exchanged looks that Sam couldn't read. Admiral Vorg approached the table and placed a device in the center. It projected a holographic image of the galaxy, with a section on the outer rim glowing red. "We represent the Galactic Confederation, an alliance of 26 warrior species," Vorg said. "We rule 2/3 of the known galaxy. The red zone represents territory lost to the swarm in the past 10 orbital cycles." "The swarm?" Kelly asked. "A collective consciousness that consumes all in its path," Krazek explained. "They are the only enemy that has given the Confederation pause in 1,000 years. Sam studied the map. "And Earth, where are we?" Vorg touched the device, and the image zoomed in to show their solar system. It sat just outside Confederation territory, directly in the projected path of the red zone's expansion. "You are insignificant," Vorg said bluntly. "But your position is not. We offer you membership in the Confederation as a buffer zone." "A buffer zone," Sam repeated, meeting Kelly's eyes briefly. "You want us to be the first line of defense against this swarm." Krazek's laugh echoed in the room. "Your species could never stand against the swarm alone. We offer protection, technology, knowledge. In exchange, you provide resources and territory." One of the bear-like Ursari touched Sam's arm, squeezing his bicep and making a sound that needed no translation. The aliens were laughing. "Such soft creatures," the Ursari said. "It's amazing they've survived this long." Kelly Grant watched the aliens carefully, noting how they moved, the technology they carried. While everyone focused on the conversation, she observed the subtle details, the way Krazek's eyes constantly scanned for threats, how their weapons were designed for their specific physiologies, the rigid, predictable patterns in their movements. As the meeting concluded, Sam agreed to present their offer to Earth's Council. When the aliens departed, Kelly stayed behind. "Sir," she said quietly, "did you notice how they think? So linear, so confident in their physical superiority. They've never had to adapt or innovate." Sam looked at her. And you think that matters against their technology and numbers? Kelly nodded slowly. I think it might be everything when the swarm comes. 6 months passed quickly. Earth joined the Confederation under terms that Sam had negotiated to be slightly better than cannon fodder, but not by much. Alien technology began to flow to Earth, mostly defensive systems that the Confederation considered outdated. Early on a Monday morning, the alarm sounded in the new Earth Defense Headquarters built beneath the Rocky Mountains. Sam ran into the command center where Kelly was already studying the long-range sensor data. Swarm scout ships, she said without looking up. 3 of them, just past Neptune's orbit. Sam's face hardened. Have you alerted the Confederation? Yes, sir. Admiral Vorg is sending a defensive fleet. They'll arrive in 2 days. When the Confederation ships arrived, they'd brought a mix of species. The Ursari and Draconis made up most of the command staff, with 4 other alien races serving in various roles. They established a base on Earth's moon and barely consulted with human forces about their defensive plans. At the first War Council, Captain Jack Miller sat quietly as Admiral Vorg outlined a standard defensive formation for the fleet. Jack had fought in Earth's last global conflict and recognized flaws in the plan immediately. With respect, Admiral, Jack said when Vorg finished, that formation leaves your flanks exposed to swarming tactics. The room fell silent. Admiral Vorg turned slowly to face Jack, his massive furry head tilting to one side. I have commanded fleets for 80 years, human. The Ursari have been warriors for thousands of years before your kind discovered fire. Our tactics are proven. Against conventional enemies, Jack pressed. You said yourself the swarm is different. War General Krasik made a hissing sound that the translators didn't catch. The human thinks he understands battle better than the Confederation War College. Laughter rippled through the alien commanders. Jack was effectively dismissed from the rest of the planning session. Later that day, Kelly found him in the cafeteria at headquarters. She sat across from him with her tablet. I think you're right, she said quietly. I've been studying their battle records. The Confederation has always relied on superior strength and technology, not strategy. Their battle plans haven't changed in centuries. Jack looked at her with interest. And the swarm adapts constantly. That's why they're winning. She slid the tablet to him, showing a simulation of the swarm's attack patterns. Meanwhile, in a small lab 3 levels below, Peter Rodriguez worked on a device spread across his workbench. Components from both human and alien technology had been combined in ways their creators never intended. Will it work? Olivia Thompson asked, watching from her station, where she monitored swarm communications. In theory, Peter replied. If Lieutenant Grant's analysis is correct, this should disrupt the frequency they use for their hive mind, but we can't test it without alerting them. The door opened, and Sam entered with Kelly and Jack. Sam looked at the prototype device. How long until it's ready? 3 days, maybe 4, Peter said. Make it 2, Sam replied. The scout ships were just the beginning. Our deep space sensors detected the main swarm fleet this morning. Kelly pulled up a new set of images on the main screen. Hundreds of organic-looking vessels moved through space like a massive school of fish. Admiral Vorg is still refusing to consider our input, Sam continued. So we're implementing our own defensive strategy alongside theirs. Won't they notice? Olivia asked. Not if we're careful, Jack said. Their arrogance is our advantage. They don't even bother monitoring our communications because they think our technology is primitive. What about Europa? Kelly asked quietly. The room fell silent. 2 days earlier, a swarm advance force had attacked the Confederation outpost on Europa. Half the personnel had been killed before the swarm retreated. Admiral Vorg called it acceptable losses, Sam said, his voice tight with anger. Said it was just a holding action. Those were 38 people, Jack said, 15 of them human. Peter looked at his device with renewed determination. 2 days. I'll have it ready. Sam nodded. Good, Because we're not going to be acceptable losses. We're going to show the Confederation and the swarm what humans can do. Outside, the stars shone peacefully over Earth, but among them, drawing closer by the hour, the swarm was coming. Kelly paced the small conference room, her tablet displaying complex data patterns that scrolled faster than most could follow. Sam, Jack, Olivia, and Peter watched her with growing interest. "I've been studying all the Confederation species," Kelly said, stopping to face the group. "And I found something interesting. Every one of their warrior races evolved as apex predators on their homeworlds." "Meaning?" Sam asked, though his eyes suggested he already understood. "They never needed to think creatively to survive. They were always the strongest, the fastest, the most physically dominant." Kelly pulled up images of the different alien species. The Ursari, the Draconis, all of them. They think in straight lines because they never needed to think any other way. Jack nodded slowly. "Explains their rigid battle formations. Humans, on the other hand," Kelly continued, "we were never the strongest. We survived because we outthought our predators. We adapted, created tools, worked together in new ways." Peter leaned forward. "You're saying our weakness is actually our strength." "Exactly." Kelly switched screens to show the swarm ships. "Now look at the swarm's attack patterns from the last 3 engagements. They're not linear like Confederation tactics. They're fluid, adaptive. Like us," Olivia whispered. Kelly nodded. "And they use a hive mind system to coordinate. All their ships are connected through specific frequencies that Peter and I have been mapping." Sam studied the patterns. "And your theory is that we can disrupt these frequencies." "Better than that," Peter said, pulling up designs on his tablet. "We can use the disruption to sever their connection to the main hive. Each ship would be isolated, confused." "But Admiral Vord rejected this idea," Sam said, his voice flat. "He called it primitive speculation," Kelly confirmed. "Said their battle doctrine has worked for centuries and doesn't need human interference." Sam looked at each person in the room. "So we deploy this plan without telling them." It wasn't a question, but everyone nodded anyway. The next morning, Sam stood before Admiral Vord in the Lunar Base Command Center. The massive Ursari was reviewing battle plans with his officers when Sam entered. "Commander Fletcher," Vord said without looking up, "your vessels are assigned to defensive positions in Sectors 7 and 12. The briefing data has been sent to your ships." "I've reviewed the assignments," Sam said carefully. "My captains have concerns about the positioning." Now Vord looked up, his small eyes narrowing. "Concerns?" "The formation leaves several approach vectors open to flanking maneuvers." War General Krazak, who stood nearby, made that hissing laugh again. "The human is still worried about tactics. Strength wins battles, Commander. The swarm will break against our lines like water on stone." Sam kept his face neutral. "Of course, we'll take our positions as ordered." As he turned to leave, he caught Kelly's eye across the room where she stood quietly observing the alien commanders. Her slight nod told him everything he needed to know. Back on Earth, Peter worked through the night, assembling the final components of his disruptor devices. 50 small satellites, each equipped with the frequency disruptors, waited in the launch bay. "Will Vord detect them?" Olivia asked as she helped load the satellites onto a transport. "Not likely," Peter replied. "They're using our deployment ships, which they barely scan because they consider our technology primitive. And the satellites themselves are designed to appear as simple communication relays." Jack entered the bay, his uniform showing signs of a long day. "How many ships do we have ready?" 17, Peter said. "Small, fast vessels that the Confederation considers support craft. They're positioning them at the edges of the formation, perfect for what we need." "And the crews understand the real plan?" Jack asked. "Yes," Olivia confirmed. "We've briefed them separately from the main Confederation orders. They know what to do when the signal comes." Jack looked at the satellites, then at the ships being prepared. The Confederation thinks we're weak because we don't have armor like theirs, or claws, or strength. They don't understand that humans became the dominant species on Earth without any of those things. Peter smiled slightly. They're about to learn. In orbit above the moon, Admiral Vorg's flagship prepared for departure. The main swarm fleet was now just 12 hours away. The swarm fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system, like a dark cloud blotting out the stars. Hundreds of organic-looking ships moved together in perfect coordination, their patterns shifting constantly as if they shared a single mind. From the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Vorg watched the sensor readings with cold confidence. Around him, Ursary officers moved with practiced efficiency, their massive forms dwarfing the few human liaisons stationed on the vessel. All ships move into formation, Vorg ordered. Prepare main weapons. The Confederation fleet began to arrange itself in the same battle formation they had used for centuries. Large, heavily armored vessels formed the center, with smaller craft positioned in rigid lines along the sides. The human ships took their assigned places on the outer edges, seemingly inconsequential parts of the massive armada. On the UES Defiant, Captain Jack Miller stood at the command station, watching the deployment unfold on the main screen. "They're making the same mistake again," he said quietly to his executive officer. "That formation worked against conventional enemies who attacked the center of force. The swarm doesn't fight that way." "Sir, Admiral Vorg is hailing all captains," the communications officer announced. Vorg's massive face appeared on screen. "All vessels maintain formation. The swarm will break against our center. Victory will come through strength and discipline." After the transmission ended, Jack looked at his crew. "Maintain position for now, but be ready to execute Operation Thunderstorm on my command." Throughout the human fleet, captains received the same hidden orders. The small, agile Earth vessels appeared to follow Confederation protocols, but each was prepared to break formation when the time came. On the lunar base, Kelly Grant worked with Olivia Thompson in the secondary command center, while the main Confederation commanders focused on the battle display in the primary center. The two women monitored a different set of screens. "Stealth satellites are all in position," Olivia reported, "hiding in the sensor shadows of the larger ships, just as you predicted." Kelly nodded. "Any sign they've been detected?" "None. The Confederation scanners are focused outward on the swarm. They're not looking for anything small behind their lines." Peter Rodriguez joined them, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Final calibrations are complete. The disruptors are ready on your command." Sam Fletcher entered the room, closing the door behind him. "Admiral Vorg just rejected my final suggestion to modify our approach. He said, and I quote, 'Human tactics are as underdeveloped as human bodies.'" Kelly barely looked up from her screen. "Their loss. Our satellites are in position. Jack's fleet is ready." "Good," Sam said, "because I'm seeing something in the swarm's approach that Vorg is missing." He pointed to a pattern forming at the edges of the swarm fleet. While the main body approached directly, smaller groups were subtly shifting position, moving to encircle the Confederation formation. "They're going to hit us from multiple vectors," Sam said. "Exactly what Jack warned about." "The Confederation sensors must see this," Olivia said. "They see it," Sam confirmed, "but they don't understand it. They're interpreting the swarm movements through the lens of their own tactics. They think it's a feint to draw out their flanks." "How long until engagement?" Kelly asked. 30 minutes, Sam replied. "And I have to get back to the main command center before they notice I'm gone." He looked at the three of them. "When this starts, Vorg is going to be furious that we deployed without authorization. There could be serious consequences." Peter shrugged. "Only if we survive." "We'll survive," Kelly said with quiet confidence. "The question is whether the Confederation will swallow their pride and follow our lead when they see our plan working." Sam nodded, then headed for the door. 25 minutes until we find out." In the vacuum of space, the two massive fleets drew closer. The Confederation ships maintained their rigid, predictable formation. The swarm moved like a living thing, its components shifting in ways that seemed random but held a deeper pattern that only Kelly had fully recognized. And hidden throughout the battlefield, 50 small human satellites waited silently, their primitive appearance concealing technology that might change the course of the war. The first swarm attack came exactly as Kelly had predicted. Instead of striking the center of the Confederation formation, where the heaviest firepower waited, dozens of smaller swarm vessels suddenly accelerated and swept around to attack from multiple angles simultaneously. In the main command center on the lunar base, Admiral Vorg roared in surprise. "Impossible. They should have engaged our center line." Sam stood quietly nearby, watching as the Confederation's neat formation began to crumble under the unexpected assault. Vorg's flagship, positioned prominently at the front of the formation, took 3 direct hits from swarm energy weapons. The massive vessel's shields flared bright blue, then failed completely on the port side. "Admiral," Sam said calmly, "may I suggest?" "Silence, human," Vorg snarled. "All ships maintain formation. Reinforce the center." But the damage was spreading. The swarm had identified the command ships and was targeting them with precision. On the tactical display, Sam could see Confederation vessels trying to maintain their rigid positions even as they were picked apart. In the secondary command center, Kelly nodded to Olivia and Peter. "Now." Olivia opened a secure channel to all human vessels. "Operation Thunderstorm is go." "Repeat, Thunderstorm is go." Aboard the UES Defiant, Jack Miller gave the order they had been waiting for. "All human vessels, break formation. Execute pattern Echo 7. Across the battlefield, the small human ships suddenly peeled away from their assigned positions. To the Confederation commanders, it looked like retreat. War General Krazek's voice boomed over the command channel. "The humans are running. Cowards." But the human vessels weren't retreating. They were executing a complex series of maneuvers, drawing swarm ships away from the main battle and into predetermined zones. The smaller, more agile Earth ships could make turns and accelerations that would kill most alien species, whose bodies couldn't withstand such key forces. In the secondary command center, Peter activated the satellite network. "Disruptors online in 3, 2, 1. 50 stealth satellites simultaneously powered up, each emitting a precise frequency that targeted the swarm's hive mind communications. On the tactical display, the effect was immediate and dramatic. Swarm ships caught in the disruption fields began to move erratically, their perfect coordination suddenly broken. "It's working," Olivia said, her eyes wide as she watched the data stream. "The connection between the swarm vessels is breaking down. Each ship is being isolated from the hive." Kelly was already on the move, heading for the main command center with Peter and Olivia following. They burst through the doors just as Admiral Vorg was receiving reports of the swarm's sudden disarray. "What is happening?" the massive Ursari demanded, turning to face them. His ship had taken more damage, and one arm hung limp at his side. "We deployed frequency disruptors throughout the battlefield," Kelly explained quickly. "They're severing the swarm's hive mind connection. Each ship is now fighting individually instead of as part of a collective." Vorg's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You deployed weapons without authorization." "Look at the tactical display, Admiral," Sam said, stepping between Vorg and Kelly. "Our plan is working." On the main screen, human vessels were executing attack runs against confused swarm ships. The small Earth craft moved in unpredictable patterns, striking weak points that Kelly had identified in her analysis, then breaking away before the swarm could respond. "Captain Miller is transmitting tactical data to all Confederation ships," Olivia reported. "Some of the alien captains are already adapting, using our movement patterns." War General Krazek watched in stunned silence as a group of human ships flew straight through a swarm formation, firing precisely at junction points between the organic armor plates. The swarm vessels split apart, their internal systems exposed and vulnerable. "Impossible," Krazek muttered. "Their ships are half the size of ours, with a fraction of the firepower. "It's not about size or power," Sam said. "It's about adaptation and unpredictability. The swarm has never encountered an enemy that thinks like we do." Admiral Vorg stared at the battle unfolding before him. His mighty fleet, with its superior technology and physically imposing warriors, was being saved by the very humans they had dismissed as weak. "All Confederation vessels," he said slowly into the command channel, "follow the human attack patterns." The battle shifted in ways no Confederation tactician had ever seen. Human vessels darted between swarm ships like water flowing around rocks. Their movements seemed random at first glance, but Kelly Grant saw the pattern. From the command center, she coordinated with Jack Miller, adjusting their strategy every few minutes as the swarm attempted to adapt. "They're trying to reestablish their hive mind," Olivia reported, her eyes fixed on the communication signals. "Shifting to backup frequencies." "Peter, adjust the disruptors," Kelly ordered without hesitation. Peter's fingers flew across his control panel. "Already on it. Satellites are recalibrating now." On the main tactical display, they could see small groups of swarm ships beginning to coordinate again, only to fall back into confusion as the human disruptors found their new frequencies. Admiral Vorg watched it all with a mixture of disbelief and growing respect. His own ship had taken heavy damage in the initial assault, and repair crews worked frantically to maintain life support systems. The mighty Ursari commander had never expected to be fighting for his life against an enemy that the Confederation had underestimated for years. "Commander Fletcher," Vorg said, his voice quieter than Sam had ever heard it, "your tactical officer's analysis was correct. The swarm does not fight like any enemy we have faced before." Sam nodded but kept his focus on the battle. "Not all strength comes from muscle and armor, Admiral." Outside in the void of space, Captain Jack Miller led a squadron of human ships on a daring attack run. The UES Defiant and 5 smaller vessels approached a swarm command node that Kelly had identified. Larger than the other ships, it pulsed with energy as it tried to reconnect scattered swarm vessels. "All ships, prepare to execute Maneuver Delta," Jack ordered. "Hit the junction points precisely on my mark." The human ships accelerated to speeds that would have crushed an Ursari or Draconis pilot. Jack felt the pressure pushing him back into his seat, but remained conscious through years of training. Human bodies had adapted to withstand such forces better than the physically stronger alien species. His squadron fired their weapons in perfect synchronization, targeting weak spots in the swarm node's organic armor. The massive ship shuddered as energy beams sliced through critical systems. Jack's ships pulled away just as secondary explosions began to chain through the swarm vessel. "Command Node 3 is down," Jack reported back to Lunar Base. Kelly's voice came through clearly. "Excellent work, Captain. Swarm coordination is dropping by 23% in your sector." Across the battlefield, other Confederation ships were beginning to adopt human tactics. Not all succeeded. The larger vessels couldn't match the agility of human ships, but enough were breaking from traditional formations to create chaos among the swarm forces. War General Krasek, who had been silent since the battle began turning, finally spoke. He directed his words not to Admiral Vorg but to Sam. "Your species fights without honor," he said, though the usual contempt was missing from his voice. "No direct confrontation. No test of strength against strength." Sam met the reptilian alien's yellow eyes. "We fight to win, General. Honor means little to the dead." Krasik made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Perhaps that is why the swarm fears you more than us now. We intercepted some of their communications before they went silent. They called you the unpredictable ones." On the tactical display, more swarm ships were beginning to withdraw. Their perfect formation had dissolved into individual vessels fighting for survival. Some fled while others fought on, but the collective intelligence that had made them so dangerous was shattered by the human disruptors. Olivia looked up from her station, eyes wide. "I'm detecting a massive energy surge from the remaining swarm command ships. They're powering up jump drives." "They're retreating," Peter said in disbelief. Kelly shook her head slightly. "Regrouping." They'll be back, but they'll have to adapt their entire approach. The hive mind is their strength and their weakness. Admiral Vorg stepped closer to the humans, his massive form towering over them. For a moment, Sam thought the Ursari might revert to his earlier contempt now that the immediate danger was passing. Instead, Vorg did something no human had ever seen from a Confederation commander. He lowered his massive head in a gesture of respect. The Confederation owes its victory today to human innovation, he said formally. We have much to learn from each other. 1 week after the battle, the Confederation High Council gathered on their central world to receive the official report. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from all 26 warrior species. At the center stood Admiral Vorg, War General Krasik, and to the surprise of many, Commander Sam Fletcher and Lieutenant Kelly Grant. The Supreme Counselor, a towering draconis with scales that had faded to white with age, looked down at the humans with ancient eyes. We have reviewed the battle data, the counselor said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. For the first time in 800 years, the swarm has been defeated in direct engagement. Murmurs spread through the gathered representatives. The counselor raised a clawed hand for silence. Admiral Vorg explained how this victory was achieved. Vorg stepped forward, his injured arm now in a healing brace. The massive Ursari looked at Sam and Kelly, then back to the council. The humans, he said simply. Their tactics, their technology, and their understanding of the swarm's weaknesses made this victory possible. Gasps and sounds of disbelief filled the chamber. The Supreme Counselor's eyes narrowed. Explain further. Kelly stepped forward at Sam's nod. She stood small but confident before the council. The Confederation has always relied on superior strength and direct confrontation, she said, her voice clear. This approach works against conventional enemies, but not against the swarm, which fights as a collective intelligence. Our smaller, more agile ships and our ability to adapt tactics moment by moment gave us an advantage that brute force could not. And the frequency disruptors? The counselor asked. My idea, Kelly said without pride or modesty, simply stating fact. Peter Rodriguez built them based on our analysis of swarm communications. They severed the hive-mind connection, forcing each swarm ship to fight alone. The Supreme Counselor was silent for a long moment. Then he did something unprecedented. He stepped down from his elevated position and walked directly to Kelly and Sam. Up close, he towered over them, his ancient face unreadable. For generations, the Confederation has judged species by their physical might, he said. We saw humans as weak, as prey rather than predators. We were wrong. He turned to address the entire council. From this day forward, humans will be granted full membership in the Confederation, with seats on the War Council and access to all our technology. 5 days later, Sam stood in the new Joint Command Center on Earth. Confederation and human officers worked side by side at various stations. In the center of the room, a holographic display showed the location of the retreating swarm fleet. They'll be back, Admiral Vorg said as he joined Sam, but they will find us better prepared. Sam nodded. Kelly's heading the new Joint Tactical Division. Sharing our different approaches is already producing results. Across the room, Kelly was working with officers from 3 different species, explaining human battle tactics that had been refined over thousands of years of fighting other humans. The aliens watched with new respect as she outlined strategies that emphasized flexibility over raw power. Peter entered the command center with a group of engineers, both human and alien. They had been working nonstop to improve the disruptor technology and distribute it throughout the Confederation fleet. Jack Miller, now promoted to Admiral of Earth's expanded fleet, joined Sam and Vorg. The Ursari shipbuilders are interested in our hull designs, he said. They can't believe how we compensate for G-forces during high-speed maneuvers. Vorg made a sound that Sam now recognized as laughter. My nephew asked Captain Miller to teach him human fighting techniques. He said, and I quote, "Size and strength are meaningless if you cannot hit your target." Sam smiled. Adaptation goes both ways. We have much to learn from each other. Outside the command center, Earth continued its day. Most humans went about their lives unaware of how close they had come to destruction, or how their species had earned respect among the stars. In the distance, a group of Draconis warriors were learning human martial arts from a small woman who repeatedly flipped a warrior twice her size. The alien rose each time with greater respect in his eyes. The strongest warriors in the galaxy had laughed at humans until the first battle. They weren't laughing anymore. They were learning.